Something shifted in the last decade, and most men felt it without being able to name it. Women got harder to read, not in an intriguing way, but in a detached way. It is like a person who is physically present but operating from somewhere else entirely. And the more you tried to engage seriously, the more you realized the signal was not getting through. This was not because the signal was weak. It was because on her end, the frequency was already completely saturated. That saturation has a specific cause. It did not happen randomly, and it did not happen slowly enough to notice in real time. But the effect is visible everywhere now. It is visible in how women move through social spaces, in what they respond to, and in what they do not. And if you have ever looked at a pattern of behavior and thought that it does not make any logical sense, it will by the end of this. Think about what a woman's average Tuesday looks like right now. She wakes up, posts a photo, and before her coffee is even done, 30 men she has never met have already told her she is beautiful. Not one of them knows her last name. Not one has had a real conversation with her. They just saw a photo and decided she deserved their complete emotional investment. By noon, that number is in the hundreds. By the end of the day, it might be in the thousands. Every single one of those interactions sends the same message. You are extraordinary simply by existing. Now, here is what that actually does to a person's psychology. Not what we assume it does, but what it actually mechanically does. When someone receives approval, without having to earn it, without any filter or discernment, their internal calibration breaks. The mechanism that tells us something matters because it is rare simply stops functioning. Validation that arrives constantly from everyone for nothing does not feel special anymore. It becomes noise. But here is where it gets strange. Even when it becomes noise, the brain still wants more of it because the brain was never wired to evaluate the quality of approval, only to seek more of it. So you end up with a woman who is simultaneously drowning in attention and somehow still hungry for it. She does not know why she keeps checking her phone. She does not know why a genuine compliment from a man in front of her lands flatter than a throwaway comment from a stranger online. She is not doing this consciously. She is not calculating. She has been conditioned slowly and thoroughly by a system that rewards her simply for showing up and punishes nothing. And the man who approaches her with real intention, something that actually costs him something, gets processed through the same filter as everyone else. That is not a moral failing on her part. That is what happens to anyone who lives inside a feedback loop that never pushes back. If every door opened for you automatically, you would eventually stop knowing how to knock. The problem is not that these women are bad people. The problem is that the environment they are operating in has removed every natural consequence that would otherwise build discernment, perspective, and genuine appreciation for what is actually in front of them. And this is where it becomes directly relevant to your life, because a lot of men still approach this landscape with instincts that made sense in a different era. You put in effort. You show genuine interest. You make yourself available. You treat her like she is worth pursuing. And what you get back, if you get anything, is at best lukewarm and at worst a kind of unconscious indifference. This is not because she dislikes you. It is because you just added yourself to the pile. You became another Tuesday notification. You gave her exactly what she already had too much of. This is the part most people completely miss. The conventional read on this situation is usually about confidence or availability or how you carry yourself. That read is not wrong, but it is incomplete. It describes the behavior without explaining the mechanics. The real reason a man who does not perform for her approval registers differently when he does is because he interrupts the pattern entirely. He is not applying for the position. He is not contributing to the noise. He is a different kind of signal in a sea of identical ones. And even a conditioned brain still notices genuine contrast. I want to be precise about something here, because this argument can easily go in a direction that is not accurate. Not every woman you will encounter is operating from this inflated space. Some have stayed genuinely grounded either because they never leaned into that world or because they are self-aware enough to see what it does to them. What we are examining is a behavioral tendency produced by a specific environment. It is real and it is widespread, but it is not a verdict on every woman alive. The skill is recognizing it clearly, not assuming it everywhere by default. But let us be honest about what you have actually observed. You have probably watched a woman scroll past a message from someone who genuinely cared while spending 40 minutes responding to someone who sent a one-word opener. You have seen women in relationships treat a loyal, present man like background furniture while lighting up for attention from someone who is clearly just passing through. You have probably been that loyal, present man doing everything the way you were told to do it, watching it produce the exact opposite of what you were promised. That is not bad luck. That is a pattern with a cause. The cause is this: when a person's ego has been inflated past the point where anything feels like a genuine prize, the things that should feel like prizes stop registering. Effort becomes invisible. Consistency becomes expectation. Real investment becomes background, and the things that should be red flags, unavailability, indifference, hot and cold behavior, those things become interesting. This is not because she is broken. It is because her calibration is off. She has been swimming in so much easy warmth for so long that she literally cannot feel it anymore. And the one thing that cuts through the noise is the absence of it. This is also why intelligent men end up drawn to women who treat them poorly. It is not a character flaw. It is a misread signal. The man notices she is warmer when he backs off, and he interprets that as evidence that something real is there and just needs the right conditions. So he adjusts, he recalibrates, he tries to find the exact frequency that unlocks her. And all of that effort, all of that precision goes directly into confirming to her that she is worth the optimization. He just became another man proving her point. I have watched this happen to men I respect. Smart men, men who read people accurately in every other area of their lives. They miss it not because they are naive, but because they wanted the thing to be real. And that gap between what they hoped was there and what was actually there is where a lot of time and energy disappears without returning anything. There is another layer to this that almost never gets discussed. The men who feed the machine are not bad men either. Most of them are genuinely lonely. They are looking for a point of contact, a moment of warmth, something that feels like it is going somewhere. And the platform makes it feel almost possible. She liked your comment. She watched your story. She replied with a single emoji. Each one of those micro signals gets interpreted as proximity, as progress, as a thread worth pulling. But what is actually happening is that the platform is monetizing his hope. It keeps him engaged, keeps him posting, and keeps him clicking. And she remains an abstraction at the end of a screen, unaffected, her number going up while he stays exactly where he was. Nobody wins in that transaction. He loses time. She loses the ability to be seen clearly by anyone. Think about what that means at scale. Millions of men a day running the same loop, sending, waiting, interpreting, adjusting. And on the other end, a woman whose sense of her own market value has been calibrated not by real interactions, but by the aggregate of every man who ever double-tapped a photo at 11 RPM. That is not a realistic sample. That is a distorted one. And a woman who has been told by that distorted sample that she is exceptional, that she has endless options, and that nothing she does will cost her anyone's attention, that woman is going to behave accordingly. Not out of malice, but out of math. So what does a man who actually understands this do differently, not tactically, but fundamentally? He stops treating women in that inflated space as if they are operating on the same relational logic he is. He stops bringing real emotional investment to interactions where the other person's infrastructure genuinely cannot receive it. He stops auditioning for a role in a story where the casting director has already seen 10,000 applicants that day. He simply does not participate in that particular economy. This is not bitterness. This is not a wounded response. It is the same logic you would apply to any situation where the cost-to-return ratio makes no sense. You do not pour serious work into a project that the other side will never take seriously. You do not train hard for a game that does not keep score honestly. You do not invest in soil where nothing grows. Opting out of that dynamic is not a retreat. It is a rational allocation of something finite and valuable. Your actual attention and what you do with that attention matters more than the opting out itself. Because the man who steps back from that cycle and directs the same energy into building something real, his work, his standards, his relationships with people who actually show up, that man starts developing something genuinely uncommon right now. He starts carrying himself like someone who knows his own position. This is not a performance or a posture he puts on. It is an actual internal orientation. He is not scanning the room for approval. He is not adjusting himself in real time to whoever he is standing near. He has a baseline that does not move. That is what makes him visible in a different way. Not to every woman, but specifically to women who have not been consumed by the machine. Because those women exist. The one who keeps her phone face down during a real conversation. The one who is genuinely curious about what you think. Not performing curiosity. The one who has something she is actually building. Something she would miss if she spent all her time collecting reactions from strangers. She exists. She is rare, and she does not respond to the same signals that feed the inflated ego pattern. She responds to the precise opposite. She responds to a man who does not need her to respond, who is fully present in his own life, who would welcome her in it genuinely, but whose life clearly does not require her to function. That man is legible to her because he is the same thing she is trying to be. A person with a grounded, self-determined identity. Two people operating from that place can actually build something durable. Not because the chemistry is unusual, but because the foundation is different. The foundation is two people who chose each other from completeness, not from vacancy. Here is what I want to say directly, because this is the point where everything converges. If you are single right now and you have been recognizing these patterns throughout this video, in women you have encountered in your own behavior, in the dynamic you have been trying to navigate, understand this. Your solitude right now is not a failure state. It is a position of integrity. The alternative to being alone is not being with someone who only registers your value when you are pulling away. The alternative to being alone is finding someone who can actually receive what you bring. And that person will not be found by men who are busy running after women who have already communicated through behavior and not words, that they are not available for something real. The men who end up in real partnerships are not the ones who finally decoded every type of woman. They are the ones who stopped trying to. They filtered. They held a standard, not a checklist, but a standard. A felt sense of what interaction with another person should actually feel like when it is working. And they were willing to stay in their own lives fully until they found that instead of filling the gap with something that looked like it from a distance. Which brings us back to the beginning. The woman who made you feel like you were the problem. Now you understand what was actually happening. Her ego had been so thoroughly padded by invisible men clicking buttons on a screen that she genuinely could not feel the weight of a real person in front of her. That is not information about your value. That is information about her environment. And the clearest thing you can do with that understanding is stop performing for an audience that is not watching. Stop writing messages that take you 20 minutes to someone who responds in 3 seconds with something generic. Stop rearranging your schedule for someone who has never once moved anything for you. Stop interpreting her occasional warmth as evidence that the real version of her is about to emerge. It is not. The warmth you catch occasionally is the warmth she distributes to everyone who stays close enough to receive it. It does not mean what you want it to mean. The men who spent years trying to be the exception to this pattern almost all say the same thing when they finally step back. They wish they had trusted what they saw earlier. Not what she said, not what she occasionally showed, but what the overall pattern actually communicated. Individual moments can be anomalies. The pattern cannot. So the practice, if you want to call it that, is learning to read the pattern and respond to it honestly. Not with resentment, but honestly. If you are consistently the one initiating, consistently the one adjusting, and consistently the one wondering where you stand, you already know. You just have not decided to accept it yet. Accepting it early is not cynicism. It is clarity. And clarity is what keeps you from spending 6 months of real energy on something that was structurally incapable of becoming real. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from this. Not the exhaustion of doing too much, but the exhaustion of doing too much for too little for too long, with no honest accounting of what is actually being returned. It accumulates quietly. You do not notice it the first month. You do not even notice it the third. But somewhere around month 5 or 6, you realize you have been running on the assumption that the return is coming. That if you stay consistent enough, patient enough, and present enough, something will shift. And you look back at everything you put in, and you look at what came back, and the numbers do not add up. That specific exhaustion is the cost of refusing to read the pattern honestly. It does not arrive dramatically. It settles in. The irony is that the man who operates from that clarity, who does not chase, does not perform, and does not negotiate for basic reciprocity, becomes exactly the kind of presence that might actually matter to a woman who is capable of receiving it. Because nothing recalibrates a person's sense of value like genuine scarcity. Not manufactured absence, not tactics, but actual indifference to approval coming from someone who clearly has a sense of his own. That is genuinely rare in this environment. And rare things still get noticed even in a saturated market. You are not an option. You are not a notification. You are not one more set of eyes confirming that she is extraordinary for existing. And the moment you stop operating like you are, not as a strategy, but out of an actual understanding of your own position, everything shifts. You stop being depleted by interactions that were never going to return anything. You stop being confused by behavior that is now completely legible to you. You start directing your energy toward what is actually worth it. The machine that produces inflated egos is not going anywhere. Social media is not going away. The system that rewards women for showing up and holds nothing back regardless of how they behave keeps running. What changes is whether you are still feeding it, whether you still show up as one more person confirming the story. You can choose not to. Not because women are the problem, but because your time, your energy, and your genuine attention are worth more than what that transaction returns. Stay in your own life. Stay selective enough that you would actually recognize something real when it shows up. Stay complete enough that you are not waiting for someone to fill something in you. That is not isolation. That is a man who knows what he is worth, and that man eventually meets people who know it too. If this analysis has changed the way you perceive the digital noise and the patterns of modern validation, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. We are uncovering the psychological truths that have been buried under layers of social conditioning. Reclaim your focus and build your own future. The next deep dive into the mechanics of reality will begin soon.